afternoon, everyone. My name is Amanda Ayers. Thank you all so much for being here today. This is a webinar on chapter activities and events that is obviously being hosted by Sigma Tau Delta. So if you stumbled in by mistake, now you know where you are. I do just want to thank you all so much for, one, for being here today, and then also for entering your name and your school in the chat. Please continue to do that as you come in. Just helps us to see who's here. And for us all to kind of know who each other is as we're getting to connect. So like I said, my name is Amanda Ayers. I am the Senior Student Advisor this semester for Sigma Tau Delta. I am a master's student at Florida State University, and as a student advisor, I work closely with our Student Leadership Committee, who represents all of you and the various regions that we all have, that Sigma has. And my job is really to help to connect the student voices with the board and vice versa. So that's what I am. And so I'm here today to kind of speak on behalf of the student leaders. I do see some of our student leaders here, Lily and Brett, so we're so excited y'all are here. And yeah, that's me. So Kaine, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Kaine Ezell. I'm Associate Professor of English at Oklahoma Baptist University. I'll be riding Amanda's coattails today in this webinar. I serve on the Sigma Tau Delta board as the Southwestern Regent. I'm also the chapter advisor or co-advisor for our chapter here at OBU. My role as Regent is to try to bring some cohesive vision to our region by communicating with our student leaders and trying to give a regional voice for our national organization.
Great, thanks so much, Kaine. So just so we kind of have a lay of the land for today, we do want this to feel conversational. We have some information we're going to share with you all first at the kind of the top of the hour today. And then we're going to open things up for some conversation. And we do hope that it feels that way. Please feel free to drop questions into the chat as we're talking, and we will address those either as they come up, and then obviously we will have some time at the end for question and answer. What we're going to go through is briefly review types of events, including a bit more information on virtual induction ceremonies. We actually have Leeillard with us today, who is the Southern Regent and the chapter advisor for the University of North Georgia Gainesville campus, that's going to share with us about virtual induction ceremonies. Then we're going to talk about who to invite to these virtual events and how to do that. We also want to cover a bit about convention participation this year, what that looks like and what to expect and how your chapter can get involved. And then we're going to close out with just providing some brief information about technology and resources that are available for hosting these virtual events. So that's sort of our plan, and then we'll open things up for question and answer. All right. So I'm going to get us started. First of all, I just want to provide some context. Obviously, we're in a moment where virtual events are our new norm, and there's some obvious challenges and drawbacks with virtual events, but there's also incredible opportunity as well. For example, most virtual events are relatively cheap to put on, and so wherever your budget is at for your chapter this year, that's one great sort of benefit of a virtual event. And then we're able to open virtual events up to a wider number of people than we historically can usually invite to some of our on-campus events. So just things to keep in mind that yes, there are challenges, but there's also a lot of opportunity. So Kaine and I kind of want to start today just with giving you all some information about different types of events. I do want to shout out to the Student Leadership Committee, who at the fall board meeting was the one that was the group that really helped to kind of put this list together of virtual events that have worked for their chapter. So I'm going to start us out just by briefly going through these first 3 bullet points and kind of giving you some background on these types of events and ways that your chapter might be able to implement them. So one of the suggestions that came out of our Student Leadership Committee meeting was this idea of a weekly virtual check-in meeting. I really appreciated this idea because it really helped to Okay, so sorry, y'all. We lost the PowerPoint for 1 second. I think it's coming back to us. So I don't know if y'all lost that too, but yay, technical difficulties. But the thing that I really love about this idea of a virtual check-in meeting is that it's a very low stakes and sort of low organization type event. And so basically what I mean by that is the way that the chapter that proposed this was doing it is simply putting up a set date and time each week, and inviting people to come and join and check in. The students had a space then to talk about what they were struggling with, classes, what projects they were working on, what they were excited about for the semester. And these spaces, these kind of more casual touch points, really took the place of like conversations in the hallway between classes or meeting in your advisor's office to chat for a few minutes. So we want to encourage that, yes, we're going to give you some advice about ways to put on more organized and more structured events, but sometimes just having a touch point like this, like a weekly check-in meeting, can be really beneficial. The next two that I want to talk about are these movie watch parties and TED Talk watch parties or discussions. Essentially, the heart behind both of these ideas is just that it can be really helpful to sort of foster conversation when you have something to talk about, right? Sometimes we get a little tired of talking about how many loaves of bread we've baked or how many episodes of Netflix we've watched during quarantine. And so it can be helpful to give people something to watch, to talk about. So this first option of movie watch parties, this idea is to actually get together and watch a movie as a group, right? And using a virtual platform like Netflix or Scener to do that. So again, you can host a chat during the movie and then have time after. I've participated in one of these and it was a really positive and fun experience. For all of us, we watched Michelle Obama's documentary, Becoming, and it was a really wonderful discussion. And then also one of our other great student representatives mentioned that their chapter does TED Talk watch parties, and they actually watch these TED Talks before they come to the discussion, but they host bi-weekly or monthly discussions about a TED Talk. You could do the same thing with an episode of a podcast or something along those lines. Again, this is just a way to give people something to read or to watch or listen to, and then come together to talk about it. You could do the same with a documentary as well, have people watch it and then come discuss. But again, sort of centering something interesting that can kind of cultivate conversation can be really helpful and a little different than some of the other what feels like the millions of virtual happy hours that we get invited to at this point. Kaine, do you want to take over and tell us about these next options?
Yeah, of course. What our chapter president has made a very concerted effort this semester to let our students connect more with our faculty. And part of doing that has been to organize these book clubs. And we've asked faculty, so far we've had two, put on a book club. And it's very low stakes. What we want it to be is not class. One of the first things I tell sophomores as they're beginning their major courses is, it's a reality that by your senior year, you might not like to read as much as you did when you came in because you have so many survey courses, you have so much reading that you have to do for class that it can be a drag on your joy. It happened to me when I was an undergrad as well. And these book clubs are a low stakes way to connect with faculty and to just talk about books instead of feeling as though your grade is riding on how much information you've gained from books. And we've even made it a point to not even require reading. Reading obviously helps a better discussion, but show up even if you haven't read it, because hopefully the faculty's passion, because it helps our faculty as well, because usually we'll choose books that we typically do not get to teach in our survey classes or in our topics classes. So it's a good opportunity for us to share a book that we love that we might not otherwise get to teach. And it's a good, using any kind of virtual environment, whether it's Google or Zoom or what have you, is a good opportunity to invite a wider range of students to generate their interest in reading, and also that connection with faculty, I think, is also faculty aside from the chapter advisors is a great a great outlet for students. And by the same thing, a poetry night, whether you have students reading original poetry or doing a themed night. For example, this month is Hispanic Heritage Month. You could do a poetry night in which you read poetry by Hispanic authors, or in February for Black History Month, or women's writers any month, just because. Just any kind of themed poetry night that can bring students together outside of a classroom atmosphere to remind ourselves all why we love reading and why we're interested in this in the first place, especially in the middle of a really rough semester. And the last item here is this themed trivia night, which we did earlier this semester. Is a really fun activity to make students aware that they have learned things in their classes. And a way you can generate interest in this is if you have the money in your budget, that's always a big if, but if you have the money in your budget, to offer some kind of prize reward. We have the money in our funds to get about $50 worth of Amazon gift cards. Use that as a first, second, and third prize, and we had a few more students show up as a result of that. And these trivia nights can be around a theme, or they can just be general trivia. They don't necessarily even have to be literary. You could do a movie trivia night, or a TV trivia night, or a TikTok trivia night. I don't know, whatever's popular. Whatever can get your students engaged and together and meeting would be a great benefit to chapters across the country.
All the millennials and Gen Zers rejoice at the idea of a TikTok trivia night. We would sweep the floor. Yeah, Lee's mentioning the Groundhog Day trivia that the chapter at University of North Georgia does. They give comically tiny trophies to Groundhog Day trivia winners. So yes, it's a fun thing to think about, even little things like that can kind of carry on for future semesters as well. So that's actually a great segue here. Again, I wanted to say thanks to everyone that participated in the poll. I meant to mention it before I sort of scooted to the next slide, but thank you all for that. Helps us to kind of know what to talk about a little bit more in our discussion later. I'm going to invite Lee Leeillard to share a bit about her experiences with the virtual induction ceremony at her chapter, which is at the University of North Georgia, Gainesville. Lee, are you there? Lee may be having. Okay, she's saying stand by. Lee was actually my chapter advisor at University of North Georgia, and so we worked together there. And yeah, I can kind of jump in and get started as Lee's getting connected. Really, the big thing with virtual induction ceremonies, I know that every chapter does this a little bit differently. Their induction ceremony. Some chapters don't really do much of an induction ceremony. The culture at UNG is definitely one that sees that the induction ceremony is a big part of our kind of celebration for the year, and so finding a way to continue that is important, and has been important throughout the history of Sigma at UNG. So a couple of things to keep in mind. One, I think to think about induction ceremonies as kind of a great opportunity to sort of build excitement around your chapter and what's going on in it. So adding new members, even in the midst of the pandemic, is a really an energizing thing for everyone. And then it also is a place to kind of celebrate what your chapter's been doing and to get everyone on the same page as you're moving forward into this school year. So a couple of things that we wanted to hit on was this idea of using a shortened version of the usual script. So obviously a normal hour-long induction ceremony is going to be too long for our purposes. So it's important to think about that. There's a sample induction. There's Lee. take it away, we can use
Hey
it.
y'all, sorry about that. And
It's
I'm
okay.
my earpods are not working, so I hope that the audio quality is okay. So I missed a little bit
As
of what
soon
Amanda
as I
said. I missed a little bit of what Amanda said, but we did a virtual induction and actually had more attendees than from our standing membership than we had during a regular induction ceremony. Obviously, it wasn't quite the same in terms of having family and friends there, but it was a great way for us to really just connect. I loved the idea of having a kind of low stakes weekly check-in or something like that. But this was also an opportunity for us to kind of lay the groundwork for the semester. We do an induction at the beginning of the fall and the beginning of the spring. And we also did a lot of recruiting over the summer because what else were we going to do? So we ended up inducting members who had joined over the summer as well. And I think it was also just a really nice way to kick off the semester and to show that we're still here and we're still working hard to be active. As Amanda, I heard a little bit of what she said about the shortened version of the script, and I think that's you have the sample you can look at there. So the great thing about this ceremony was that essentially my exec officers put it together. That the vice president, who for us is typically in charge of sort of the induction ceremonies, modified the script. We worked together on those modifications. The VP and my co-advisor and I worked on those modifications. But then also the VP put together a set of Google slides that whoever was talking could talk over. And so that was a really nice way to shift the responsibility to one of our student leaders. But then also following the induction, we had a short member meeting, and it was a nice way. We had a different student put together some Google slides for that kind of information. So however you do it, I'd really encourage you to get your students invested, and then that's a better way of getting them to invite their friends or invite other members or that kind of thing too. So I think that's all I have to say about it. But yeah, thanks.
That's great. Thank you, Lee. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think I'll just echo. I think it's such an important and helpful way to sort of those of you that are chapter advisors that are here, involve your students in this. It does give them something that they feel like they're contributing to in this moment in ways they feel like they're kind of building community. So that's great. Okay, quickly, I just want to, I'm going to kind of cover this and then I'll turn things over to Kaine for the rest of our presentation. But we just wanted to quickly talk a little bit about who to invite, and I want to touch on how to invite people. So some of the answers are pretty obvious, right? So obviously you're going to want to invite current members, but as I said before, one of the great things about these being virtual events is that you can expand, and you don't just have to invite current members. Invite potential members to come to these events. We also heard from multiple student leaders that they'd been inviting their alumni to their virtual events and that the response had been so overwhelming. And everyone is kind of looking for ways to connect right now, and it seemed that the alumni were really excited about jumping in and being able to connect with their chapters. Also, make sure that you're inviting the chapter advisors or attending events, students, if you're here. But then also, I was thinking about this too earlier today, consider inviting chapter advisors from other chapters within your region. This could be a really helpful way of networking and also of us learning from each other, of building collective knowledge. And then finally, make sure you're inviting your faculty. Your faculty will hopefully be excited about the chance to attend. And I wanted to quickly touch on just a quick piece of advice about how to invite. I do want to encourage, we're all using so much technology right now, so do make sure that you're using whatever technology you've been using. So if that's email or social media, make sure that you're utilizing those things that are familiar to your students. If you're only using one form of communication, though, you may think about looking at some alternative options. Some of these communication platforms like Microsoft Teams and Slack could be really helpful right now for coordinating and organizing and just for being a place of connection for students. But do make sure that you're sending out invitations through multiple streams. So whether that's via email into multiple email lists or via social media, make sure that you're getting that information out in a way that feels familiar, but is also reaching your students. So just a bit of advice. All right, great. Well, I'm going to turn this over now to Kaine to kind of give us a little bit of a rundown about the virtual convention and then to kind of continue us through. Oh, Kaine, I think you might be muted. Kaine, can you hear me?
And invite your regent.
I don't know if your audio was cutting out for anyone else. It may have just been me, so apologies if it's just me, but I wasn't hearing the very beginning of that. Okay, yep. I just saw someone else just posted in the chat that they can hear you, but we can hear you now. So go ahead and if you can jump back in and start.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, my apologies. I'm just going off script for a second to the previous slide. That as I said, and you might not have heard, invite your regents, right? If you're from the Southwestern region, invite me. Now, I might not be able to do it because of a conflicting schedule, but a great thing about regional events is that they are virtual events is that they are easier for us to attend. And we can at least make an appearance and see what everyone else is doing so that we can steal your ideas for our own chapters, because that's a lot of what we're doing here. My role now is to keep you informed about the 2021 convention, and you can find information about it on englishconvention.org. I saw on the pre-webinar poll, that there are a number of you who are already committed to attending, and then very likely was very low picked, and then there was I need more information first. So if you need more information, go to englishconvention.org. I can give you, and we can give you an outline right now of some of the things that are going to happen in this virtual convention. There will be roundtables, there will be speakers, there will be networking, there will be bad poetry, and there will be a meet and greet game night. Now, what form that takes, we're not entirely sure at this point, but these will be some of the events that will happen in this virtual meeting. And make sure that your chapters are aware that roundtable submissions are due by November 9th. And the registration opens January 4th with $25 for the early rate through February 1st and $30 for the general rate. And not on the slide is an email that you can use if you have further questions for those who are organizing the convention. That is englishconvention@niu.edu. So if you have specific questions, there, I see it in the chat. So if you have questions about some of these events and how this virtual convention is going to take shape, and I know many of you have questions because you put it on the poll. So please send those questions to that email address so that you can have them answered, because we want to see everyone there. So what's next, Amanda? So some technology and resources. I'm assuming that whether your university uses it or not, we all know what Zoom is. We are all very painfully aware of what Zoom is. So there are other options as well. You have Google Meet. Amanda mentioned TED Talks, and there's a link to that. A resource we use for our virtual trivia night is Kahoot. And some of you might not be familiar with that, but if you have secondary English ed majors, chances are you are familiar with it. It's often used in P12 schools, and not solely used in that environment, but primarily used. In P12 schools, students can use their phones and take a interactive quiz. And what's really nice about it is it keeps score for you. So you don't have to worry about keeping score. You know, you can just invite everyone to play. It takes a little bit of time to make your question list beforehand, but once you get your questions made, it runs itself. You just tell it to go to the next question, and it gives you a leaderboard as the questions are progressing. So students really, in our virtual trivia night, had a really fun time, you know, seeing themselves go from 5th place to 1st place, and then the sadness that comes with crashing from 1st place to 6th place and what have you. So I can't recommend Kahoot enough. It's a really easy way to keep score, and it lets you be involved with the game with your chapter. And another resource for the kinds of activities we were talking about is Netflix and Scener. Amanda, you might be able to speak to that more than I can, so I'll let you explain
Absolutely.
that.
So Scener is a platform that that we use for the movie nights that I was talking about. And basically, I will be honest, I used it from a participant standpoint, so I haven't done it from the administrative standpoint yet. But I believe that it's my understanding is that it's a platform that you can use with any watch service. And so essentially you give the Scener platform login to your attendees, and they use that to log in, and then you use that to watch together. There's a live chat feature, so you can chat while you're watching. You can see people's cameras while you're watching, and then you also can kind of stay in the space before and after. I do not. Amy's asking a great question. If there's a fee or are there any copyright issues? We did not run into that. There did not appear to be any fees that we had to pay or anything like that. But that's a really good question and definitely something to look into. I think obviously you couldn't, you couldn't charge anyone to attend, obviously. But yeah, that's a good question. It didn't seem to be an issue. I'll say it that way. But yeah, it's a good point. So, and then Linda's asking if all students have to have a subscription to say Netflix. I don't believe that they do. I don't think you have to have a Netflix subscription. I think that the way that this works is that, you're essentially, if I'm hosting it, then I'm using my Netflix subscription to log in and to watch it. And then I'm essentially, it's almost like share screen in Zoom. And so I'm sharing my screen with you. But it just is a little bit, the platform's designed for everyone to be able to watch and hear the audio together. And it can feel a little clunky at certain times. It's definitely not a perfect platform, but it worked well for what we were doing. And yeah, it was really enjoyable. So good questions. So that really leads us very well into this next section. Oh, we did want to quickly just mention some upcoming presentations. Our November webinar, we're still waiting on details to kind of be finalized for that, so keep an ear to the ground for that. In December, we're going to have a webinar presentation on Charles Dickens and his relevance for the 21st century. In January, we'll cover scholarships, awards, and internships. And then in February, the student leaders are really excited to get to talk with you about student leadership society positions for 2021 and 2020 and 2021. So yeah, so just a quick heads up for you all. So that's really where we are. We want to open it up for questions. So we'll open up the floor. Feel free to type in the chat if you have questions for us. Yeah, let us know what questions do we have? What are things that that you'd like to know more about from what we've presented on today?
And while we're waiting on people to type in, I recognize that our executive director, Bill Johnson, had a question for me regarding what are some books we've used for book discussions. The most recent one we did is a novel called Peace Like a River by Leif Enger. Our next one will be The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, which kind of takes us outside of what I was mentioning about the works being those that are not typically read in class, but I still think there can be that lack of pressure that comes with reading The Great Gatsby in class versus just getting to read The Great Gatsby and talk about how great it is.
So we had a question from Robert in the chat if the convention is going to be virtual this year or if it's going to be held at NIU. So good question, good clarifying question. Yes, the convention is going to be virtual this year. So that's what Kaine was sort of alluding to with the idea that the format's going to be a little bit different. So so the format will be a little bit different, obviously, for this year because it is virtual. We're exclusively accepting roundtable submissions for this year. So that's kind of the background on that. It's a good question. And like Kaine said, really the best place to go to for the full information is englishconvention.org. So Priscilla is mentioning that she'd love to see an example of an induction ceremony conducted over Zoom. So we don't have a recording, I don't think, of an induction ceremony, but we do have that script that's live on the English Convention or the English.org website. So, and actually, Natasha, will this PowerPoint be made live? Is this being sent to people that they can access? I can also take us back to that slide. We're going to get whiplash for a second. Sorry, y'all.
I'm in here. Yes, this PowerPoint presentation and session is being recorded and will be available to attendees. And those links, yes, on that slide are on the English.org website, so those can be accessed. And just to chime in also the question we had a little bit earlier about the convention being virtual and the connection to NIU. So the central office is based in DeKalb, Illinois, and we partner with Northern Illinois University. They're a sponsoring institution of Sigma Tau Delta, which is why all of our official email addresses end in @niu.edu, and we're using a platform through NIU. So that's the connection. So for those of you that didn't already know that.
That's great, Natasha.
Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you. And Elsie actually just copy and pasted the links to these links. There are now live links in the chat to these two resources. And Leeillard also generously put her email address in the chat for us as well. So if you want to connect directly with her, that might be good. Yeah, and Lee's also mentioning that their chapter did a great Zoom event for Banned Books Week, and then including a collaborative discussion with multiple groups on campus. So Lee is their chapter has done some really exciting things, and actually this weekend is hosting the Southern Regional Conference virtually, which is very exciting.
Yeah, we have a question here about what do we do to motivate students, and when I have the answer for that, I will put that in a bottle and sell it, because if you all have the same difficulty that we have here on our campus, it's that our students are typically torn in 20 different directions because they're members of so many organizations outside of Sigma, which makes it difficult for them to attend. Many of them work jobs in addition to being students. So yeah, the difficulty of motivating students to attend these, I think, is a pain that many of us share. What's worked for us is when we can, and again, not everyone is able to even have a budget enough to set aside $50 for a prize, even a door prize just for attending the movie night. That can help. Trying to target people, trying to find events in which you can target people outside of the English humanities realm is always helpful. So if you can find a way to appeal to students who might be in comm or even theater, that'll be a way to generate attendance, which would hopefully eventually lead to a broader membership besides just English majors, because we have a nursing major in our chapter right now, and she's the greatest. She brings a completely different perspective to our chapter when she comes to our events and participates in our meetings.
Yeah, and I'd say too, just quickly to that question about motivation, I think that it is, and I'm not sure if you're a chapter advisor or I can scroll back up or a student, but I think also looking to your students. So the ones that are involved, making sure that we're hearing them of what they need right now, what feels helpful, what feels overwhelming, I think is really important. And kind of encouraging them to provide feedback on what that looks like. But yes, and I echo everything Kaine said as well. I think this is a moment where we get to be a little unconventional, so not being afraid to do that. We had another great question that Claire asked. Kaine, and I was hoping that you could speak to this. She said that my chapter is planning a remote trivia night with Kahoot. Did you use that in conjunction with Zoom? And were students able to work in teams?
The first answer to that question is yes. I didn't think it was possible, and I was rehearsing with my chapter president the night before and getting frustrated because I was trying to mirror my iPad screen with the trivia on my TV with the camera on my TV. And I finally got frustrated trying to make all that work and just decided, you know what, we're going to try this through Zoom and see if it works. And it did. Now, can students work in teams? The students are able to just sign in under one username. So if they're all in the same location, then they could certainly share a device. And even if they're not in the same location, you could have one student type in a group name on a device. I don't know how they would discuss answers in that case if they do that, but they could certainly text one another in that venue. But we did it individually, so the group dynamic might be a little bit more difficult to work out.
Great. All right, y'all. Well, we are actually a little bit over time for today. It's now 2:37, so we will stick around for a little while, and we're happy to answer questions. Or if you had a question that wasn't answered, we can retype it in. We just want to say thank you to everyone for attending, and please reach out to us if you have questions. And like I said, stick around if you have further questions and want to continue to discuss. But thank you all so much for being here. We appreciate it. I hope you have a great afternoon.